What's up, fellow YouTubers? Sipping on a cold beer. So, I'll read you an article. I'm just gonna jump right into it. Now, if you'd like to read this article for yourself, I'll post it in the description box below. March 2020 was the first March without a school shooting in U.S. history since 2002. March 2020 was apparently the first March in nearly 2 decades without a school shooting in the U.S. Schools across America have been shut down since early March as a prevention measure to slow the spread of coronavirus. Since then, kids of all ages have adjusted to homeschooling and online classes, a new normal that could extend through the rest of the school year. For most of those students, this is one of the longest stretches in their lifetimes without school shootings ever occurring. As first reported on Twitter by Washington Post reporter Robert, there hasn't been a March without school shootings since 2002, the year most current high school seniors were born. Right off the bat, could you imagine being in this generation of kids who grow up watching all these school shootings unfold on the news? You know, it's, dude. I hate mass shootings. I hate them. I do. Innocent lives are taken and it gives guns a bad name. So a lot of these students are terrified. And the sad part of it is, it took the coronavirus to stop mass shootings. Which ironically, the coronavirus and cars kill more people right now than anything else. And it's sad. But it's the truth. The fact that it took a pandemic, worldwide pandemic, to stop violence like this from occurring. And honestly, it's sad. All the anti-bullying campaigns, all the just be nice to each other, that doesn't do shit. It took a worldwide pandemic to stop it. Now, you know how I feel about smarter gun control versus stricter gun control, so I'm not going to get into that. But, well, if you're new to my channel, I believe in smarter gun control. Like, for example, if the AR-15 shoots a pistol cartridge, then make it 21 or older. Have stricter background checks for all guns, but especially stricter than that checks for assault weapons, 30 round magazine or less, no bump fire, no fully automatic, no silencers. And you shouldn't be allowed to 3D print guns in your home. I don't agree with that. Leave gun making to the professionals. But anyways, yeah, that's just how it is. Like, it took a pandemic around the world to put a stop to this nonsense. Ridiculous. For the most of these students, this is one of the longest stretches in their lifetimes without a school shooting occurring on the news. As first reported on Twitter by Washington Post reporter Robert Klamico. Not sure how you pronounce his last name. There hasn't been a march without a school shooting since 2002, the year most current high school seniors were born. So every year in March or around springtime, whatever, that's pretty sad, actually. It's really sad. Ask yourself, how would it feel if you lost someone to a mass shooting? Regardless of where it happens, how would you feel if you lost someone you cared about to a horrific mass shooting? You'd be devastated. So why do it to someone else? Data from the National School Safety Center and National School Safety and Security Services confirm that there have been school shootings every March since 2002. That year, a 13-year-old student brought a gun and a hit list to school but was subdued by a school rescue officer deputy before he could pull the trigger. Okay. I think we need to change our definition of a quote-unquote shooting because that's a failed attempt. How are you going to call it a shooting if you stopped the shooter before they pulled the trigger? That's where I'm confused. And the fact that we have to consider metal detectors and rescue deputies for our schools to keep them safe, that's pretty sad. The article continues. In March 2020, there were several incidences of shootings on school campuses, but none that fit the typical description of a school shooting. Okay, again, this is where I had another problem with the article. Typical description. You know, that typical description washing they do of everything. That stereotype. So tell me, what is a typical description of a mass shooting? Some pissed off teenage white kid who has no friends? Some pissed off male? Because if you want to play that argument, I can name several mass shootings where the person was not only not white, but also of a different gender. Yep. Let's not go down that route. According to Everytown for Gun Safety, an organization that tracks gun violence in the United States, there were a total of 7 shootings that took place on school campuses in March 2020. Four of those shootings were classified as unintentional discharges. One took place between adults on a high school football field over the weekend, and 2 occurred on college campuses but involved no students. First of all, if you're not a cop, why do you have a gun on school campuses? Second of all, this is why gun owners get a bad name: the accidental discharge. And King Cobra JFS is going to give you some proper gun safety tips. Do you want to prevent accidental discharge of your firearm? Here's a pro tip: keep it empty. Keep your gun empty unless you have to use it. Pro tip, and then you won't have an accidental discharge, will ya? Keep the gun empty and always handle it like it's loaded. 2 biggest things they tell you about gun safety. But when people fail to do those kinds of things, you know, shootings aren't the only things that give guns a bad name. The idiots who are stupid with them in other ways also affect the way people view them. And this is the problem with it. A lot of the hatred towards guns is separated into 2 categories. The first category has people who hate guns because they fear them and they don't understand them, and it's just fear based in ignorance. The second one is people who have had the experiences, the negative experiences with them, etc., etc. The problem with this argument, though, is both sides are right, you know. But the organization called Every Town for Gun Safety, let's remember that organization because we're going to come back to it. According to a 2018 paper published in the New England Journal of Medicine, firearms are the second leading cause of death amongst youths in the United States, behind motor vehicle crashes. And the article continues, Every Town for Gun Safety calls the problem uniquely American. Okay, that right there. Two things. First of all, the second leading cause to car crashes. So if some idiot is texting and driving and he causes a nasty car crash, he or she, you know, do we blame the cell phone? Do we blame the car? No, we don't blame the cell phone. We don't blame the car. We blame the asshole who couldn't wait to text. So why are guns held to the different standard? I mean, that's a tough but fair argument. Every time there's a mass shooting, they blame guns along with everything else. And why are cars and cell phones held to a different standard? I don't get that. Because if you use cars and cell phones responsibly, you know. And then, of course, the Every Town for Gun Safety Committee calls the problem uniquely American. You know, going back to what the article said earlier about classified as a typical school shooting, I'm like, what is a typical school shooting? Some pissed off white kid who doesn't have no friends? Pfft, pathetic. And then calling the problem uniquely American. As a proud American, that offends me. That straight up offends me. Now, what if it's someone who wrote an article calling the coronavirus uniquely Chinese? A lot of people would be offended by it, and that's the kicker of it. That's the goddamn kicker of it. You got communist China blaming the United States for starting the coronavirus, and you got the United States blaming China for starting it. It's a whole shit show of racism. And then on top of that, because, you know, the pandemic is just going to make everything so fucking peachy, but on top of that, we can't wipe our assholes, and we're dealing with racist assholes on top of it. There seems to be a correlation with that. Uniquely American. Fuck you. You know, and hear me out. Like, I get so tired of the stereotype against Americans as being gun crazy, rednecks, you know. It's just, YouTube, you know. It really is just, like, I don't know how else to say it, you know? I really don't. Uniquely American. Right. But if someone had made a racist accusation of being uniquely black or uniquely Latino, people would be offended, would they not? Fuck racism for that matter, but I'm just saying, like, uniquely American. Man, it just fits into that typical stereotype, doesn't it? That Americans are, that stereotype, that negative stereotype that Americans are lazy idiots who love guns too much. I hate that stereotype. But here's the thing of it. You could have 375 million gun owners, but if 6 or 8 of them do something stupid, then the rest of us who are responsible with our guns get a bad name. And nobody else. Guns don't kill people, people kill people. Because people are the ones that invented guns in the first place. People are the ones that discovered gunpowder, discovered how to make fireworks. People have been killing each other since the dawn of time. The only difference is we evolved from swords, spears, crossbows, bows and arrows, and torches to something else. And the article continues. While school shootings are down, gun dealers around the country said they are seeing record numbers of customers. One store manager told CBS News that the main reasons customers said they were buying firearms is for protection during quarantine and fear of the unknown. Yes, if you're stuck in quarantine and things get desperate and some motherfucker's trying to stab you or shoot you over your shit, because it's sad that we have to consider these things, a gun for self-defense, nothing wrong with that. But that would be the media doing its job, you know, like a lot of us out there, I don't personally fear guns, but at the same time, I have a responsibility and respect to know that guns are not toys, plain and simple. It's just something you don't fuck around with, dude. And of course, like a lot of people out there, you're being told the world's going to shit, and then you hear about all the shootings in our country, and you start thinking, you gotta get a gun to protect yourself. But a lot of people out there are not very knowledgeable on the subject. They're terrified of guns, but they feel like they have to have one because, that's just how it is. Before you get a gun, do your research, take some classes, Don't be one of those idiots that stands in the gun store looking around like you know what the fuck you're doing. And gun salesperson walks over to you and goes, "Can I help you find something in particular?" And you're just sitting there scratching your head going, I'm not sure what I'm looking for. Just want to protect myself because of the quarantine and in case someone tries to steal my supplies or break into my house. What do you recommend? Don't be one of those guys or people in general, Keep your gun empty unless you have to use it. Do your research before you buy a gun. And fear of the unknown. Well, sometimes being prepared for the unknown doesn't hurt, but at the same time, how do you prepare for the unknown when you know not what is ahead of you? Oh. And the article concludes with, given the spike in sales, gun safety advocates fear students are not only facing more dangerous situations at home, but could also face a major increase in shootings when they return to school. When this pandemic ends, we emerge from this physical distancing reality, the guns will remain, said Guns Down America Executive Director Igor Volosky. Not sure how you pronounce his or her name. Will there be increased mass shootings, school shootings, shootings at home, at work, or at concerts? Yeah, I certainly hope not. I hope people can wake the fuck up and realize, you know what? How would it feel if you lost somebody to gun violence? Someone you deeply cared about. If the idea upsets you, then why do it to someone else? And you know what? Gun violence and mass shootings can piss off. One second, YouTube. And I'm going to sound a little bit controversial here, but hear me out. Okay, whenever there's a mass shooting of any kind, you know, that's all it takes for these anti-gun groups to go, guns are evil, the guns themselves are not evil, it's what you do with them, I mean, this is the problem with it. Both sides of the argument are right. You have all these organizations that are so focused on anti-gun this, anti-gun that. Then you have organizations that are like Second Amendment this, gun rights that. So, ooh-wee. That's a well-known fact. The NRA is the government's one of their smaller donors. No, the the government's biggest donors are big alcohol and big tobacco, next to big oil, next to the timber industry, next to the cotton industry. Like the government's biggest donors are the oil companies and the pharmaceutical companies. The NRA is not their biggest lobby, and the sooner you realize this, the smarter you become. Like, the NRA is not the bad guy here. That's what people need to realize. And when you hear people say the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And of course, people who hate guns hate hearing it because it's the truth. And what are you going to do if some asshole sneaks into your fucking house with a gun and you don't have one to protect yourself? So now what? They shoot you dead and there you go. That's that. Excuse me. But guess what? Truth be told, if you do the research, knives and cars. It's not just cars, okay? Knives kill people more than guns do. The coronavirus is now killing more people than guns at this point. You know, and I heard about the shooting at that country music concert, and I'm like, dude, that's bullshit. You know, these people out there trying to enjoy the spirit of music. What gives you the right to put a stop to that? What's got you so pissed off? You know what I'm saying? I cannot physically make myself understand what makes people do it. You know? There are a couple of points in this article that had me questioning things. Things like uniquely American or typical shooting. I'm like, you know, you might have to relook, you know, we might have to redefine mass shootings and what they are, and we need smarter gun control, not stricter gun control. Simple as that. Keep your gun empty unless you have to use it. Anyways, YouTube, I'll put the link to this article in the description box below. Fuck gun violence, fuck mass shootings. That's how I see it. Be safe out there and be smart with your guns. Until then, I'll catch you cool cobras in the next video.